Hello, my dear listeners. I'm Anna, and tonight I invite you to drift alongside me into the emerald embrace of Bali, where ancient temple bells whisper through humid air, thick as silk against your skin. This Indonesian jewel has drawn me back countless times, each visit revealing new layers of tranquility hidden within its volcanic landscapes and sacred groves. There's something profoundly healing about the way golden light filters through swaying bamboo, casting dancing shadows that seem to breathe with the island's gentle rhythm. As we begin our journey together, I want you to settle deeply into comfort, letting my voice guide you through terraced hillsides and along shores where obsidian sand meets turquoise waters. Can you imagine how it might feel to walk barefoot across volcanic stone, still warm from the day's sun, feeling the earth's ancient energy pulse gently beneath your feet? Now breathe deeply and let yourself sink into the embrace of twilight as we find ourselves standing at the edge of a verdant rice terrace in Bali's central highlands. The air here carries a different quality than anywhere else on Earth, thick with moisture, yet somehow crystalline, wrapping around your shoulders like the softest cashmere shawl. Before us, emerald paddies cascade down the mountainside in perfect geometric harmony, each flooded field reflecting the lavender sky above like mirrors crafted by celestial hands. The evening light transforms everything it touches into liquid gold. Palm fronds rustle overhead with the gentlest whisper, their feathery tips catching the last rays of sun and scattering them into dancing patterns across the water's surface. In the distance, the soft percussion of wooden tools echoes from hidden villages, a rhythmic tapping that seems to match the steady beating of your own relaxed heart. Your bare feet sink slightly into the muddy path between terraces, the earth yielding like warm clay beneath your weight. The sensation is grounding, connecting you to generations of farmers who have walked these same routes. Small channels of water trickle alongside the walkway, their gentle gurgling creating nature's most peaceful lullaby. The sound grows softer as we move deeper into this agricultural wonderland, replaced gradually by the distant chorus of tree frogs beginning their nightly serenade. Frangipani blossoms perfume the humid air with their intoxicating sweetness, while underneath flows the green scent of wet earth and growing rice. Each breath fills your lungs with this perfect blend of floral nectar and tropical richness. The fragrance shifts subtly as we continue our unhurried journey, now carrying hints of wood, smoke from cooking fires, now touched with the mineral freshness of mountain springs. As darkness slowly embraces the landscape, tiny fireflies begin their ancient dance among the rice stalks. Their miniature lights pulse like fallen stars, creating constellations that shift and swirl with each gentle breeze. The temperature has cooled just enough to feel perfect against your skin. No longer the blazing heat of day, but a warm caress that makes clothing feel unnecessary, superfluous. We descend gradually along a stone pathway worn smooth by countless monsoon seasons. Your fingertips trail along bamboo railings, feeling the subtle ridges and valleys of each segment. The texture is surprisingly cool and polished, like touching marble that has been kissed by ocean spray. Night blooming, jasmine begins to release its heady perfume into the thickening air, joining the symphony of scents that seems to change with every step. From somewhere in the velvet darkness comes the haunting sound of a gamelan, those bronze instruments creating melodies that seem to float rather than travel through the air. The music feels ancient and timeless, each note hanging suspended in the humid atmosphere before dissolving into the next. It's impossible to tell if the sound comes from a nearby temple or drifts from miles away. Distance becomes meaningless in this dreamlike landscape. Water buffalo move like gentle shadows through distant fields, their presence felt more than seen. The soft splash of their hooves in shallow water mingles with the rustle of rice plants bending in the evening breeze. Everything here moves with deliberate slowness, as if the entire island exists in a state of perpetual meditation. The stone beneath your feet changes texture as we approach what appears to be an ancient temple complex. Here, the pathway becomes more refined, individual stones fitted together with such precision that no mortar was needed. Each step produces the faintest whisper of sound, your footfalls absorbed by centuries of weathering that has left the surface smooth as silk, yet somehow still providing perfect grip. Incense drifts from unseen shrines, adding layers of sandalwood and sacred herbs to the air's complex bouquet. The smoke rises in lazy spirals, visible only when it passes through shafts of moonlight filtering down through towering trees. These ancient giants create a natural cathedral overhead, their massive trunks disappearing into shadows, while their highest branches seem to brush against the stars themselves. The cathedral of leaves parts before us, revealing a sacred courtyard where lotus blossoms float in still reflecting pools. Moonbeams paint silver pathways across the water's surface, and you notice how the lotus petals seem to glow from within, as if harboring their own gentle luminescence. The pools connect through narrow channels carved directly into the temple floor, creating a network of waterways that sing with the softest murmur, a sound so subtle it seems to emerge from the stones themselves. Ancient statuary emerges from alcoves draped with flowering vines, their carved faces wearing expressions of infinite serenity. Moss has claimed portions of their surfaces over centuries, creating a living velvet texture that your curious fingers discover is surprisingly cool and plush. The stone feels alive beneath this green coating, as if the sculptures are slowly returning to the earth that birthed them, engaged in a dance of creation and dissolution that spans millennia. Prayer flags flutter high overhead, their vibrant colors muted to soft pastels in the moonlight. The delicate fabric catches even the slightest movement of air, creating a gentle rustling that mingles with wind chimes crafted from hollow bamboo segments. Each chime produces a different pitch, their random collisions weaving melodies that seem composed by the night itself. The sound carries a hollow, woody quality, unlike anything metal could produce, warm and organic, like whispered conversations between old friends. Stepping stones guide us across a wider pool where koi fish create lazy ripples with their leisurely movements. The water temperature surprises your toes with unexpected warmth, heated by underground springs that bubble up from volcanic depths far below. Tiny air bubbles tickle your ankles as you pause mid-crossing, watching silver fish glide beneath the surface like liquid mercury given life. Beyond the temple complex, a jungle path beckons with its tunnel of interwoven branches. Here, phosphorescent fungi dot fallen logs with pinpricks of blue-green light, creating natural lanterns that seem placed by fairy hands. Your passage disturbs sleeping butterflies, and they flutter away on wings that catch the filtered moonbeams, living petals of amber and deep purple that vanish into the foliage as quickly as they appeared. The jungle floor yields differently beneath each step, sometimes spongy with accumulated leaves, other moments firm where roots have woven an underground tapestry. Hanging lianas brush your shoulders with the texture of rough silk, while broader leaves create gentle curtains that part at your approach. The sensation is like moving through nature's own beaded doorway, each contact soft and welcoming rather than obstructive. Night-blooming orchids reveal themselves as pale ghosts among darker vegetation, their exotic forms seeming almost artificial in their perfection. One variety releases its fragrance only when touched by human warmth, and as you pass, waves of vanilla and honey drift from their hidden blossoms. The scent is so rich, it feels almost edible, coating your palate with sweetness that lingers long after you've moved beyond their reach. Emerging from the jungle's embrace, we find ourselves on a cliff overlooking the coastline far below. Here, trade winds carry entirely different perfumes, salt and seaweed, yes, but also the green scent of coral gardens, and something indefinably oceanic that speaks of vast depths and ancient tides. The breeze feels lighter at this elevation, less humid, but somehow more energizing, as if charged with negative ions from distant lightning or crashing waves. A traditional Balinese pavilion appears ahead, its intricately carved wooden posts supporting a thatched roof that rustles with each gust of wind. Woven mats cover raised platforms where travelers have rested for generations, their surfaces worn smooth and comfortable from countless bodies seeking respite. As you settle onto this natural cushioning, the sensation is like being cradled by the island itself, supported, yet somehow weightless. The pavilion's elevation provides a perfect vantage point for observing Bali's nocturnal transformation. Villages below twinkle with warm yellow lights, each one a small constellation marking human habitation scattered across the dark landscape. Cooking fires send thin columns of smoke into the night air, carrying hints of roasted coconut, grilled fish, and spices, whose names exist only in local dialects, passed down through generations of family recipes. From this peaceful perch, the island's sounds layer into a complex symphony. Distant temple bells mark the passing hours with deep bronze tones that seem to vibrate through your chest cavity. Night birds call across valleys in languages older than human memory, their voices rising and falling like waves of pure music. Somewhere in the darkness, a ceremonial drum begins a slow, hypnotic rhythm that matches the pace of deep, restful breathing. The wooden posts surrounding our shelter have been polished by countless hands, and tropical weather into surfaces as smooth as river stones. Running your palms along their curves reveals subtle variations in grain and texture. Here, a small knot creates an interesting bump. Their decades of monsoon rains have carved gentle valleys in the wood's surface. These imperfections feel deliberate rather than flawed, as if the elements themselves served as craftsmen in the pavilion's ongoing creation. High above, fruit bats trace lazy circles against the star-studded sky, their leathery wings creating soft whooshing sounds as they navigate between feeding spots. Their presence adds a sense of ancient continuity to the night creatures who have followed these same flight paths for countless generations, living bridges between the island's human inhabitants and its wilder spirits. As we rest in this elevated sanctuary, wrapped in warm air that carries whispers of 1,000 stories, the very essence of Bali seems to settle around us like an invisible blanket woven from moonlight, music, and the dreams of everyone who has ever found peace in this magical place. Stars wheel slowly overhead in their eternal procession, while we remain nestled in this sacred viewing post. And gradually, a new sound emerges from the valley below. The melodic clinking of cow bells worn by cattle being led to fresh grazing grounds in preparation for dawn. The metal produces a completely different timbre than the temple bells we heard earlier, lighter and more playful, like scattered silver coins falling into a velvet pouch. Each animal moves at its own unhurried pace, creating an irregular but soothing percussion that speaks of rural life continuing its ancient patterns regardless of human schedules or concerns. A subtle shift in the wind brings with it the mineral scent of underground caves, those hidden chambers where Balinese ceremonies honor earth spirits in complete darkness. The smell carries traces of wet limestone and something deeper, perhaps the exhalation of the volcanic heart that gave birth to this entire island chain. Mixed with these geological aromas comes the dusty sweetness of dried palm sugar being prepared in village kitchens, granules that will flavor morning coffee and traditional sweets whose recipes exist nowhere else in the world. Your fingertips discover rough hemp rope that serves as handholds along the pavilion's edge, its fibers scratchy but reassuring against your skin. The texture tells stories of island life, rope twisted from coconut husks by weathered hands, strong enough to secure fishing boats during monsoon storms, yet gentle enough to wear smooth from daily use. Following its length leads to carved wind chimes fashioned from pieces of driftwood, each piece shaped by ocean currents into unique forms that create hollow, resonant notes when they meet. Movement in the shadows below reveals a procession of women carrying clay water vessels balanced effortlessly on their heads, their white sarongs ghostly in the scattered moonlight, filtering through cloud breaks. They move with liquid grace developed over lifetimes of practice, each footfall placed with such precision that the water barely trembles in its containers. Their quiet conversation drifts upward in fragments, melodic Indonesian phrases punctuated by soft laughter that seems to bubble up from some endless spring of contentment. Descending once more, we follow a different path that winds between groves of durian trees, their infamous fruit detectable only as a faint funkiness that somehow manages to smell intriguing rather than offensive in the diluted night air. The trees themselves create dense pockets of shadow broken by occasional clearings where wild nutmeg grows in untended abundance. Crushing a fallen leaf between your thumb and forefinger releases an explosion of warm spice that makes your mouth water involuntarily. Stone lanterns begin appearing alongside the pathway, their candles long since extinguished, but their carved surfaces still radiating heat absorbed during the day's blazing sunshine. Each lantern features different motifs, mythical creatures, flowering vines, geometric patterns that seem to shift and change when viewed peripherally. In the uncertain light, your palm pressed against their surfaces finds temperatures that vary according to their exposure. Some almost too warm to touch comfortably, while others have cooled to match the ambient air. Ahead lies a series of natural hot springs feeding into terraced bathing pools carved from living rock. Steam rises in gentle curtains, carrying sulfur's distinctive sharpness, softened by mineral salts that remind you of ocean spray mixed with Earth's deepest secrets. The pools themselves glow with an eerie blue-green phosphorescence created by harmless bacteria that have thrived in these heated waters for thousands of years, turning each bath into a constellation of living stars. Bamboo pipes channel the hot water from pool to pool, their hollow chambers creating gentle glugging sounds as air bubbles travel through the system. The bamboo has been split and rejoined with such skill that the joints are nearly invisible, creating conduits that seem grown rather than constructed. Where the heated water meets cooler air, tiny droplets condense on surrounding vegetation, creating a microclimate of extraordinary humidity that supports orchid varieties found nowhere else on Earth. Testing the water temperature with tentative toes reveals layers of warmth. The surface slightly cooler where it meets night air, then increasingly toasty as your feet sink deeper. The mineral content makes the water feel silkier than normal, almost oily in its smoothness, while tiny bubbles rising from underwater vents create a natural jacuzzi effect that massages whatever body parts you choose to immerse. The sensation is immediately therapeutic, as if the earth itself offers healing through these volcanic gifts. Settling into the perfectly sized depression worn smooth by countless previous visitors, you discover that the rock contours cradle your form with surprising ergonomic precision. The stone has been shaped by centuries of flowing water and human use into something approaching sculptural perfection, supportive where needed, gentle where comfort matters most. Your skin begins absorbing the mineral-rich water, while steam opens your pores and carries away tensions you didn't realize you were holding. From this aquatic vantage point, the jungle sounds take on enhanced clarity and depth. Tree frogs calling from multiple directions create stereo effects that seem to move through three-dimensional space, while the steady drip of condensation from overhanging branches provides rhythmic accompaniment. Insects buzz past on wings that catch occasional glints of reflected pool phosphorescence, their flight paths creating brief streaks of light like miniature comets. Night blooming water lilies begin opening their petals in the cooler adjacent pools. The movement so gradual, it's almost imperceptible. Until suddenly, a flower that was closed moments ago reveals its cream-colored interior. The blossoms release their perfume drop by drop into the humid air. A fragrance simultaneously fresh and intoxicating that seems designed specifically to induce profound relaxation. Each breath draws this floral essence deeper into your lungs, where it seems to spread through your bloodstream like liquid tranquility as the mineral waters work their ancient magic on tired muscles. And the phosphorescent glow creates an otherworldly ambience around us. Bali continues its nightly transformation from day's activity into night's profound peace, each moment drawing us deeper into the island's embrace where healing flows as naturally as these sacred springs themselves. Ripples spread outward as we ease from the healing waters, our skin tingling with residual warmth that seems to pulse in rhythm with distant ceremonial drums echoing from hidden mountain temples. The transition from liquid embrace to night air creates goosebumps that quickly fade, replaced by a sensation of weightlessness that makes each movement feel effortless and dreamlike. Droplets catch moonbeams as they roll down our arms, transforming into liquid diamonds before disappearing into the earth below. A narrow bridge, woven entirely from rattan, spans a gentle ravine where a stream chatters over polished stones, its voice higher and more musical than the deeper waters we've encountered. The bridge sways almost imperceptibly with each step, creating a subtle rocking motion that feels like being cradled in nature's own hammock. Beneath our feet, the woven surface yields slightly, conforming to our weight while maintaining perfect support through centuries of traditional craftsmanship passed between master weavers and their apprentices. Wild ginger plants line the ravine walls, their broad leaves creating natural umbrellas that catch and funnel dewdrops into miniature waterfalls. The spice's distinctive bite floats upward on thermals rising from the warmer stream water, mixing with the cleaner scent of wet granite and creating an aroma that's simultaneously invigorating and soothing. Crushing one fallen leaf underfoot releases an intensified burst of this warming fragrance that seems to awaken something primal and comforting in your memory. Beyond the bridge, terraced gardens reveal themselves in the strengthening moonlight, their careful organization a testament to generations of patient cultivation. Here grow medicinal herbs whose names exist only in whispered conversations between traditional healers, plants that release their therapeutic oils when brushed against, filling the air with compounds that seem to slow your heartbeat and deepen your breathing automatically. Your passage stirs these natural pharmacies into gentle action, creating an invisible cloud of healing vapors that follows in your wake. Volcanic glass embedded in garden walls catches and reflects available light, creating subtle sparkles that outline pathways without the harshness of artificial illumination. These obsidian fragments were scattered during ancient eruptions and now serve as natural navigation aids that guide wanderers through landscapes where getting lost would be remarkably easy. Your fingertips trace these glittering veins in the stonework, feeling edges worn perfectly smooth by monsoon rains and tropical humidity working together as patient sculptors. A traditional weaving shelter emerges from behind curtains of hanging vines, its interior dimly lit by oil lamps that cast dancing shadows across looms bearing half-finished textiles. The scent of burning coconut oil creates a warm, nutty backdrop, while cotton fibers release their clean, plant-based fragrance into air already thick with creative energy. Silk threads gleam like captured sunlight, even in the lamp glow. Their surfaces so smooth they seem to generate their own luminescence. Empty shuttles rest in precise arrangements, their wooden surfaces polished to mirror-like perfection through decades of skilled hands, guiding them through countless warp and weft patterns. The tools feel substantial, yet delicate when lifted, their weight distributed with such precision that they seem to move through the air with their own momentum. Setting them down produces the softest click against hardwood work surfaces, a sound so subtle it barely registers above the night's ambient symphony. Continuing through groves where jackfruit hang like natural lanterns from towering trees, their bumpy surfaces creating interesting shadows that shift with every breeze. The massive fruits emit a sweet, custard-like aroma that grows stronger near fallen specimens beginning their return to the soil. This fragrance blends unexpectedly well with the sharper notes of nearby lime trees, creating an olfactory combination that speaks of tropical abundance and natural cycles of renewal. Stone steps descend toward coastal regions where different vegetation thrives in salt-touched air. Here, pandanus trees spread their spiky crowns like natural parasols, their aerial roots creating architectural supports that seem designed by master engineers rather than random growth. The leaves rustle with a drier sound than jungle foliage, their waxy surfaces producing whispers that carry hints of ocean breezes still miles away. Tidal pools begin appearing in rocky formations, their surfaces mirror still, except for occasional movements of hermit crabs switching shells in the eternal search for better accommodations. These miniature ecosystems harbor creatures that glow softly when disturbed, turning each footstep near the water into a trigger for bioluminescent displays that fade as quickly as they appear. The pools radiate coolness accumulated during night hours, creating microclimates that feel refreshingly different from the persistent tropical warmth. Seaweed draped over rocks releases briny perfumes mixed with something indefinably alive and vital. The smell of productivity and growth that characterizes healthy marine environments. Your bare feet discover that wet rocks were coatings of algae so fine they feel like natural silk, providing surprising grip despite their slippery appearance. Each step creates tiny suction sounds as you move between pools, accompanied by the gentlest possible lapping of water against stone walls sculpted by countless tides. Coconut palms lean at impossible angles over the emerging shoreline, their trunks curved by prevailing winds into graceful arcs that frame glimpses of dark ocean beyond. Fallen coconuts rest in sandy pockets between rocks, their husks partially dissolved by salt water into fibrous masses that feel springy underfoot. The palms themselves whisper constantly as fronds brush against each other, creating percussion so subtle it seems more felt than heard. A traditional outrigger canoe rests pulled up on coarse sand that retains warmth from hours of tropical sunshine. Its carved hull smooth as polished bone under exploring palms. The wood carries faint traces of ocean salt mixed with natural oils used to waterproof its surface, creating an aroma that speaks of adventure and journeys across open water under star-filled skies. Rope lashings holding the outrigger float show wear patterns that tell stories of careful maintenance and deep respect for vessels that connect islanders to their oceanic world. Waves approach the shoreline with hypnotic regularity, each one slightly different in size and timing, yet part of an endless pattern that has continued unchanged since long before human memory began. The sound carries undertones of vast distances and deep water, rhythms that seem designed specifically to synchronize with relaxed breathing and peaceful heartbeats. As we settle on sand, still releasing the day's accumulated warmth, this eternal percussion begins working its ancient magic, drawing consciousness deeper into Bali's nocturnal embrace, where dreams and reality merge like tide pools reflecting infinite stars. Driftwood sculptures emerge from the retreating tide like ancient guardians, their surfaces bleached pearl white by endless cycles of submersion and exposure. Your hands discover textures ranging from velvet smooth, where currents have caressed the wood for decades, to rough patches where barnacles once clung before releasing their hold to the sea's patient persistence. These natural artworks seem positioned with intentional artistry, creating rest spots that cradle your form while providing perfect views of phosphorescent plankton beginning their nightly light show in the shallow surf. Sand crabs scuttle between your toes with tickling sensations so delicate they feel like butterfly kisses, their translucent bodies nearly invisible until movement gives them away. They seem curious rather than fearful, pausing to investigate this warm intrusion into their nocturnal territory before continuing their sideways journeys toward burrows marked only by tiny sand volcanoes. Their presence adds a sense of playful companionship to the solitary shoreline, reminding you that even in apparent emptiness, life continues its ancient patterns. Salt crystals left by evaporating tide pools crunch with the finest possible sound beneath shifting weight, like crushed pearls or powdered glass yielding to pressure. These mineral deposits catch starlight and fracture it into prismatic sparkles that wink out as quickly as they appear. Brushing them from your skin leaves behind a slight residue that tastes faintly of the ocean's essential character when transferred unconsciously to your lips. A fishing village appears ahead where traditional boats bob at anchor, their painted eyes designed to help navigate spiritual waters as much as physical ones. Lanterns aboard the vessels swing gently with the harbor's motion, creating moving constellations that mirror the fixed stars above. The boats themselves emit soft creaking sounds as their wooden hulls flex with the tide's rhythm. Ancient music created by craftsmanship that has remained unchanged for generations. Nets spread for drying release, the distinctive aroma of honest work and ocean harvest. Hemp fibers seasoned with salt spray and touched by countless hands skilled in their repair. The netting creates intricate shadow patterns across sandy spaces, geometric designs that shift constantly as gentle breezes rearrange their positions. Walking through these shadows feels like passing through living architecture, temporary structures built by wind and moonlight. Clay storage jars stand sentinel outside modest homes, their burnished surfaces still radiating heat absorbed during daylight hours. Each vessel bears unique fingerprint impressions from the potter's wheel, creating textured surfaces that feel organic and alive under curious palms. Some contain rainwater that produces hollow, musical notes when tapped lightly, transforming everyday objects into impromptu instruments tuned by natural elements. Flower petals scattered for evening offerings create carpets of velvet underfoot, their crushed forms releasing concentrated perfumes that intensify with each footfall. Marigolds contribute spicy notes, while hibiscus adds honey sweetness. The combination creating natural aromatherapy that seems designed to encourage meditation and inner stillness. These sacred decorations blur the boundaries between ceremony and daily life, making every step a participation in ongoing spiritual practice. We follow a coral pathway that leads away from the village toward mangrove forests, where different waters create their own unique ecosystem. Here, brackish streams move with barely perceptible current, their dark surfaces reflecting overhanging vegetation like liquid obsidian. The water temperature varies in distinct layers, cooler currents mixing with warmer pools in a complex thermal landscape that creates its own micro-weather patterns. Mangrove roots arch overhead in cathedral formations, their bark rough as elephant skin, but surprisingly warm to the touch. These natural buttresses filter light into dappled patterns that dance across the water's surface, creating an ever-changing kaleidoscope of illumination and shadow. Air roots dangle like organic curtains, their surfaces covered in microscopic life forms that glow faintly when brushed against. Mud skippers leap between exposed root systems with wet slapping sounds, their primitive fins allowing brief flights through humid air thick enough to seem almost liquid itself. Their bulging eyes track movement with prehistoric intelligence, creatures that bridge the gap between water and land, just as this twilight journey bridges the space between consciousness and dreams. Their presence adds a sense of evolutionary wonder to the mystical landscape. Fireflies begin gathering in unprecedented numbers, their synchronized flashing creating a living aurora among the mangrove branches. The light pulses seem coordinated with your own breathing, as if these insects respond to human biorhythms, or perhaps inspire them toward deeper relaxation. Their collective glow turns the entire grove into a natural planetarium, where earthbound stars perform nightly shows for any peaceful enough to witness their magic. Mud beneath your feet warms to body temperature within moments of contact, creating the sensation of walking on living skin that responds to your presence. The substrate yields perfectly to distribute weight evenly, providing support while allowing slight sinking that feels like being embraced by the earth itself. Each step releases trapped air bubbles that tickle between your toes before escaping to the surface with the softest possible pops. Traditional fish traps woven from split bamboo create geometric sculptures throughout the waterway, their conical forms designed with mathematical precision that speaks of generations refining their craft. Water flowing through these structures produces melodic gurgling that varies with the tide's height, turning functional tools into environmental instruments that compose themselves according to natural rhythms. Their surfaces feel smooth as silk, where countless fish have brushed against the weaving. Beyond the mangroves, terraced salt fields stretch toward inland mountains, their flooded surfaces creating mirrors that double the visible stars and make the sky seem infinitely deep. Workers' footprints preserved in crystallizing brine tell stories of patient labor under blazing suns, now cooled and transformed into textured pathways that guide nighttime wanderers between gleaming pools. The mineral-rich water creates its own microclimate, slightly cooler and more humid than surrounding areas. Ancient stone markers emerge from the salt fields like sleeping giants, their carved surfaces worn smooth by weather, but still bearing traces of Sanskrit inscriptions and mythical creatures. These monuments mark boundaries between sacred and secular space, their presence adding layers of meaning to landscapes already rich with spiritual significance. Touching their surfaces reveals temperatures that fluctuate mysteriously, sometimes warm as living flesh, other times cool as mountain streams. A temple complex dedicated to ocean deities materializes from the geometric salt patterns, its spires reflecting in countless pool surfaces until reality multiplies into infinite possibilities. Here, the night's journey reaches its natural culmination, where land and sea, ancient wisdom and eternal tides, conscious awareness and peaceful surrender merge into the seamless wholeness that is Bali's greatest gift to those who approach with open hearts and quiet minds. Stone steps worn concave by pilgrims' feet lead upward through the temple's outer courtyards. Each rise perfectly calculated to accommodate the natural rhythm of meditative walking. Your heels sink slightly into depressions shaped by millions of reverent footfalls, creating an intimate connection with countless souls who have sought solace in this sacred space. The limestone feels surprisingly soft beneath your soles, its porous surface having absorbed decades of ceremonial oils until it acquired the texture of well-worn leather. Carved door guardians flanking the entrance, passages exhale coolness from their stone mouths, as if breathing out the accumulated prayers of centuries. Their eyes, inlaid with polished river stones, seem to track your movement with benevolent awareness, while their elaborate headdresses create intricate shadow plays against temple walls. Running your fingers along their flowing robes reveals hidden compartments where devotees have left tiny offerings of rice grains and flower stems, creating textural surprises in otherwise smooth surfaces. Inside the temple's heart, copper bowls filled with blessed water reflect ceiling murals depicting celestial dancers frozen mid-leap. The metal has developed a patina that shifts color depending on viewing angle, sometimes verdigris green, other moments deep bronze, occasionally flashing with its original golden hue. Dipping your fingertips into these vessels reveals water temperatures that vary mysteriously from bowl to bowl. Some refreshingly cool, while others carry warmth that suggests underground thermal sources. Silk banners suspended from carved rafters respond to air currents so subtle they're barely perceptible, their movements creating gentle undulations like seaweed swaying in underwater currents. The fabric surfaces shimmer with threads of real gold woven into traditional patterns, their metallic elements catching candlelight and scattering it in ways that make the entire chamber seem to pulse with living energy. These textiles release microscopic particles of aged silk proteins into the air, creating an almost edible richness that coats your throat with luxurious smoothness. Monks in saffron robes pass through distant corridors, their bare feet making no sound against polished floors. Yet somehow their presence registers through subtle shifts in air pressure and ambient energy. Their robes rustle with sounds like autumn leaves stirring in gentle breezes. Fabric so fine it seems woven from concentrated sunset colors. Occasionally, their low chanting drifts through stone archways, voices blending into harmonic frequencies that seem to resonate in your chest cavity and slow your pulse to match their ancient rhythms. Crystal singing bowls rest on altars carved from single blocks of volcanic stone, their surfaces bearing tool marks that speak of patient handwork accomplished before mechanical aids existed. When air currents cause the slightest vibration, these instruments produce tones so pure they seem to originate inside your own skull rather than from external sources. The frequencies created bypass normal hearing pathways and stimulate nerve centers associated with deep relaxation and spiritual awakening. Intricate floor mosaics guide footsteps along prescribed routes, their tiny tiles creating patterns that shift from geometric to organic to abstract as you progress deeper into the temple's mysteries. Some tiles feel slightly raised, while others sit flush, creating subtle texture variations that massage your feet with each step. The grout between pieces has been mixed with powdered gemstones that catch light and release it slowly, maintaining a subtle luminescence long after illumination sources have moved elsewhere. Brass ceremonial vessels line altar shelves, their surfaces hand-hammered into forms that seem to breathe with internal life force. The metal continues resonating from previous ritual use, creating barely audible humming that adds harmonic undertones to the chamber's acoustic environment. These instruments bear the fingerprints of countless priests, polished into their surfaces, until the metal has acquired an almost organic quality. Prayer wheels mounted in temple walls spin with the slightest touch. Their cylindrical forms, containing thousands of written mantras that release spiritual energy with each revolution. The bearings have been lubricated with clarified butter that has aged into a substance smoother than modern lubricants, allowing rotation so effortless it seems perpetual once started. Each wheel produces distinct whispers as air passes through carved ventilation holes, creating personalized prayers for whoever sets them in motion. Leaving the temple through different passages reveals terraced gardens where night-blooming Sirius prepares for its rare flowering cycle. These mysterious plants release pre-bloom fragrances that occur only once yearly. Essences so complex they contain notes reminiscent of vanilla, jasmine, and something indefinably otherworldly. The air around them feels charged with anticipation, as if nature itself holds its breath waiting for this botanical miracle. Stone lanterns carved from single pieces of coral limestone provide navigation through the gardens, their internal surfaces polished to mirror brightness that amplifies minimal light sources into surprisingly effective illumination. The coral origins give these fixtures unique properties. They absorb moisture during humid periods and release it gradually when air becomes dry, creating localized climate control that supports rare orchid varieties growing in their vicinity. Their surfaces feel simultaneously rough and smooth, textures that change dramatically depending on humidity levels. Ancient frangipani trees drop blossoms continuously throughout the night, their 5-petaled flowers carpeting pathways with offerings that release intensified perfume when compressed underfoot. The tree's bark bears natural spiraling patterns that seem almost scripted, genetic artwork created through centuries of genetic refinement. Touching their trunks reveals surprising warmth generated by active sap flow, as if these plants maintain higher metabolic rates than typical vegetation. Winding paths lead toward mountain slopes where traditional coffee terraces create amphitheater-like formations in the landscape. Here, plants rest in nighttime dormancy while their beans continue slowly ripening in processes that depend as much on lunar cycles as solar energy. The vegetation releases different chemical signatures during darkness, compounds that ward off nocturnal insects while attracting beneficial pollinators whose activity peaks between midnight and dawn. Volcanic soil beneath the coffee plants feels entirely different from previous surfaces, lighter, more porous, with an almost effervescent quality that suggests ongoing chemical activity far below. This earth retains heat longer than normal dirt, creating warm pockets that feel like natural heating pads against tired feet. The mineral content gives the soil distinctive colors that shift from deep chocolate to reddish copper as mineral concentrations vary across the terraced slopes. Traditional drying platforms built from bamboo framework and woven palm mats create geometric patterns across the mountainside. Their elevated surfaces allowing air circulation while protecting valuable crops from ground moisture. These structures flex slightly underfoot, engineered through generations of refinement to distribute weight perfectly while maintaining stability during earthquake tremors that periodically shake the volcanic landscape. Stream water channeled through bamboo aqueducts provides irrigation while creating musical accompaniment as liquid flows through precisely calculated diameter changes in the piping system. The engineering creates natural pressure variations that produce melodic sequences, turning functional infrastructure into environmental symphonies that play continuously throughout growing seasons. The bamboo surfaces feel cool and slightly damp from condensation, their natural oils creating subtle aromatherapy benefits as you brush past these organic water management systems. Mountain breezes carry different qualities at this elevation. Thinner, but somehow more energizing than lowland air, with crystalline clarity that makes each breath feel purifying. These currents bring hints of snow from peaks still many miles higher, mineral essences from exposed rock faces, and the green vitality of cloud forest vegetation thriving in perpetual mist zones above treeline. As we rest among the coffee terraces with volcanic peaks silhouetted against star fields that seem close enough to pluck like luminous fruit, Bali's night symphony reaches its crescendo around us, temple bells echoing between mountains, flowing water composing liquid melodies, and tropical breezes conducting an orchestra of leaves, creatures, and sacred spaces that continues its ancient performance long after peaceful sleep claims consciousness and carries it deeper into the island's dreaming embrace. Morning mist begins its ascent from hidden valleys, carrying droplets so fine they feel like whispered kisses against your cheeks. This ethereal vapor transforms the mountainous landscape into something between dream and reality, where distant ridgelines appear and vanish like thoughts at the edge of consciousness. The moisture creates its own weather system in miniature, coolness that penetrates clothing and settles against skin with the gentleness of silk scarves draped by invisible hands. Terraced slopes fade into gossamer curtains of fog that rise and fall with thermal currents invisible to the eye, but tangible as breathing. These moving walls of vapor carry botanical messages from elevation to elevation, distributing pollen and spores in aerial rivers that connect separate ecosystems through atmospheric highways. Your outstretched arms disappear periodically into these traveling clouds, emerging damp and somehow blessed by contact with skyborne moisture. Traditional wind harps strung between mountain pines respond to pressure changes that precede dawn's arrival. Their metal strings singing notes that seem tuned to planetary frequencies. The instruments vibrate sympathetically, with distant thunder rolling across neighboring islands, creating harmonics that exist somewhere between music and meteorology. Each string bears a different tension, together producing chords that shift as atmospheric conditions fluctuate throughout the night's final hours. Pine needles accumulate underfoot in layers deep enough to create natural mattresses that conform to body contours, while releasing resinous oils with each compression. These organic carpets have been building for decades without human disturbance, creating ecosystems in miniature where beneficial insects maintain perfectly balanced populations. The needles vary in age and decomposition, some still sharp and fragrant, others softened into humus that feels like walking on clouds made solid. Stone meditation circles emerge from the mist like ancient observatories, their carefully positioned rocks aligned with astronomical events occurring throughout the year. Each boulder bears natural indentations worn by centuries of contemplative bodies, creating custom seating that supports extended periods of peaceful reflection. The stones themselves seem to generate subtle warmth independent of external temperature, as if holding charged energy from countless sessions of focused meditation. Wild mint grows in protected pockets between rocks, its leaves releasing cooling menthol vapors when crushed accidentally underfoot. This natural aromatherapy creates immediate respiratory clarity, opening nasal passages while inducing the deep, slow breathing associated with relaxation responses. The plant spreads through underground runners that connect separate patches into a living network, sharing nutrients and chemical communications across surprising distances. Bamboo wind chimes of extraordinary size hang from cliff overhangs, their hollow chambers producing bass notes so deep they feel more than heard. These massive instruments respond only to significant air movements, their rare activations marking whether changes hours before conventional signs appear. When they do sound, the vibrations seem to penetrate stone and earth, creating resonance chambers in natural rock formations that amplify and sustain the tones. Mountain springs emerge from apparently solid rock faces, their sources mysterious, but their water carrying mineral signatures that taste of deep earth and time itself. The liquid maintains consistent temperature regardless of seasonal variation, suggesting connections to geothermal systems far below surface awareness. Cupping this water in your palms reveals its unusual density, heavier than ordinary water, yet somehow more refreshing, as if concentrated with essential life force. Lichen colonies paint cliff faces in colors that exist nowhere else in nature's palette. Silver-green phosphorescence mixed with copper oxidation, and hints of purple that seem to shift with viewing angle. These primitive organisms create their own microenvironments, moderating temperature and humidity in their immediate vicinity, while producing chemical compounds that serve as natural antibiotics. Their textures range from velvet soft to crystalline rough, living artwork that has been developing its masterpiece for centuries. Traditional rope bridges span narrow chasms where mountain streams have carved deep channels through volcanic bedrock. The cables themselves are woven from plant fibers treated with natural preservatives that make them stronger than steel while maintaining organic flexibility. Walking across creates gentle swaying motions that feel like being rocked in a vertical hammock, while the bridge's movement produces creaking songs that vary with wind speed and load distribution. Below, waterfalls cascade through a series of natural basins carved by millennia of patient erosion, their spray creating perpetual rainbows, visible even in moonlight when conditions align perfectly. The falling water produces negative ions in such concentration that the air becomes almost edible, each breath providing energizing effects that counteract fatigue while promoting mental clarity. Moss gardens flourish in the constant moisture, their emerald cushions so thick they seem like nature's own upholstery. Mountain caves reveal themselves through openings barely visible until approached directly, their interiors maintaining perfect acoustic properties that transform whispers into full-bodied sounds. The walls sweat mineral water that has filtered through rock layers for centuries, emerging as concentrated solutions that taste of ancient seas and primordial rain. These natural cathedrals amplify heartbeats and breathing into rhythmic symphonies that encourage synchronization with deeper, more restful patterns. Stalagmite formations within the caves feel warm as living bone, their surfaces polished by underground streams that flow only during certain seasonal cycles. The formations continue growing imperceptibly, adding microscopic layers that will eventually create new chambers and passageways for future explorers to discover. Their calcium carbonate surfaces produce subtle phosphorescence when rubbed, creating temporary illumination that fades slowly back to darkness. Emerging from subterranean chambers reveals dawn approaching with colors that paint mountain peaks in shades of rose gold and lavender impossible to capture in memory or photograph. The light moves visibly across ridgelines, transforming the landscape minute by minute as shadows retreat and reveal details hidden throughout the night's journey. Bird calls begin tentatively at first, then build into celebration choruses that seem to welcome both sunrise and tired travelers returning from nocturnal wanderings. Traditional farming communities nestled in protected valleys begin their daily activities with movements so graceful they appear choreographed. Generations of practice creating efficiency that looks effortless. Smoke from breakfast fires carries aromas of roasted coconut, steamed rice, and spices whose names exist only in local dialects, passed between grandmothers and granddaughters. The scents drift upward through morning thermals, creating aerial spice markets that perfume entire mountainsides. Dewdrops collect on spider webs strung between bamboo stalks, their accumulated weight creating temporary string instruments that vibrate with frequencies just below human hearing range. These ephemeral constructions catch early light and scatter it into prisms, turning functional architecture into jewelry displays that last only until warming air evaporates their crystalline decorations. As morning light strengthens and night's mystical transformation gradually yields to day's practical clarity, the memory of this journey through Bali's nocturnal wonderland settles into consciousness like sediment in still water, becoming part of the peaceful foundation upon which restful sleep builds its regenerative dreams, where healing flows as naturally as these sacred islands' eternal tides. Tropical butterflies begin their morning migrations, wings catching thermals that carry them between flowering meadows in patterns that follow magnetic fields older than human navigation. Their delicate forms create moving stained glass windows against the brightening sky, each species following routes encoded in genetic memories that span countless generations. The sound of their passage resembles silk fabric brushing against itself, whispers so gentle they blend seamlessly with the morning's awakening symphony. Traditional rice wine ferments in ceramic vessels buried beneath temple courtyards, the ancient brewing process releasing effervescent bubbles that tickle the earth from below. These underground chambers maintain perfect temperature through natural insulation, their contents aging according to lunar cycles that determine flavor complexity. The vessels themselves bear thumb impressions from potters whose techniques vanished centuries ago, leaving ghostly fingerprints in clay that continues breathing through microscopic pores. Medicinal steam baths carved directly into cliff faces channel volcanic gases through networks of natural ventilation, creating therapeutic environments where healing vapors concentrate into powerful remedies. The mineral-rich steam carries sulfur compounds that clear respiratory passages while depositing trace elements onto skin surfaces through processes more effective than modern spa treatments. Breathing this naturally processed air feels like inhaling concentrated wellness, each lungful delivering benefits accumulated during the vapor's journey through geological filters. Elderly fishermen repair nets using techniques unchanged since their great-grandfather's time, their weathered fingers working with muscle memory that requires no conscious thought. The hemp fibers they weave carry stories of storms weathered and abundant catches celebrated, their surfaces darkened by salt spray and smoothed by handling into textures resembling polished leather. Each knot represents family traditions passed through generations of careful observation and patient instruction. Teak forests stretch across interior valleys where massive trees create cathedral spaces beneath their interlocking canopies, their trunks so enormous that entire communities could shelter within hollow sections carved by time and patient insects. The wood itself produces natural preservatives that protect against decay, while releasing aromatic compounds that discourage harmful parasites. Walking among these giants feels like moving through living architecture designed by master builders working on timescales measured in centuries. Monsoon gutters carved from single bamboo stalks channel rainwater through village streets with engineering precision that prevents flooding while directing precious moisture toward agricultural areas. The bamboo surfaces develop natural patinas that become increasingly water-resistant over time, their cellular structure modified by exposure until they achieve properties rivaling manufactured materials. The gentle gurgling of water through these channels creates urban soundscapes that soothe rather than disturb sleep patterns. Puppet theaters prepare for evening performances, their intricate leather figures drying after applications of natural dyes extracted from local plants and minerals. Each puppet requires months of detailed carving, followed by painting processes that use pigments whose formulas remain closely guarded family secrets. The finished characters possess translucent qualities that create dramatic lighting effects when oil lamps project their shadows onto cotton screens stretched between bamboo frames. Traditional looms produce textiles whose complexity requires years of apprenticeship to master. Their multiple harnesses creating fabric patterns that tell historical stories through combinations of color and weave structure. The silk threads shimmer with natural luster, enhanced by feeding silkworms on specific mulberry varieties that grow only in particular soil conditions. Operating these mechanical marvels produces rhythmic clicking that becomes meditative for weavers who spend entire days creating inches of precious cloth. Spice gardens cultivate varieties that exist nowhere else in the world. Their genetic heritage preserved through careful seed selection, spanning countless growing seasons. Cardamom pods develop aromatic oils so concentrated that crushing single seeds releases fragrances detectable from considerable distances. The plants themselves create natural pest management systems through chemical communications that warn neighboring specimens of potential threats while attracting beneficial insects. Gold leaf artisans practice techniques requiring such precision that single sheets of beaten metal become thin enough to read through while maintaining structural integrity for application to temple decorations. Their hammering creates percussion patterns that serve as timing references for other craftspeople working in adjacent workshops. The metal develops unique characteristics through hand processing that cannot be replicated using mechanical methods. Each sheet bearing microscopic texture variations that affect light reflection properties. Terraced fish ponds utilize gravitational flow systems that maintain water circulation without mechanical assistance. Their construction requiring mathematical calculations performed using traditional measurement systems based on body proportions and astronomical observations. The ponds support ecosystem chains so perfectly balanced that intervention becomes unnecessary once proper establishment occurs. Fish species chosen for these environments produce natural fertilizers that benefit rice crops in lower terraces. Stone carvers work with volcanic rock, whose internal crystal structure influences tool selection and cutting techniques passed between master sculptors and chosen apprentices. The stone itself contains mineral inclusions that create unexpected color variations, revealed only when cutting exposes previously hidden surfaces. Each piece responds differently to carving pressure, requiring sculptors to adapt their approaches based on subtle differences in density and grain direction. Sacred wells reach depths that connect with underground river systems flowing between volcanic peaks, their water carrying dissolved minerals that create therapeutic properties valued by traditional healers. The well walls support ecosystems of beneficial bacteria that process contaminants while adding health-promoting compounds to the water supply. Drawing water from these sources requires rope techniques that prevent contamination while ensuring bucket systems operate smoothly despite considerable depths. Evening cooking fires begin with tinder made from coconut fiber processed through techniques that create material more effective than commercial fire starters, while producing smoke that repels insects without creating respiratory irritation. The flames burn with colors influenced by mineral content in the wood, creating natural lighting that enhances food preparation while providing illumination perfectly suited to human circadian rhythms. Night markets begin assembling their displays of produce grown in soil enriched by volcanic ash that provides nutrition combinations impossible to replicate artificially. Vegetables that develop flavor complexities unique to their specific growing locations. Vendors arrange their goods using traditional patterns that facilitate air circulation while creating visual harmonies based on color theory developed through generations of practical experience. As twilight deepens and day's activities transition into night's restorative embrace, consciousness drifts naturally toward the peaceful surrender where dreams become reality and Bali's eternal rhythms continue their ancient dance of renewal, carrying tired spirits into regenerative sleep where healing flows as endlessly as these mystical waters. Traditional oil lamps flicker to life throughout village courtyards, their flames fed by pressed coconut oil that burns with unusual steadiness, creating pools of amber radiance that seem to pulse with organic heartbeats. The light these ancient vessels produce feels different from modern illumination, warmer, more alive, casting shadows that dance rather than simply fall across surfaces. Each lamp's ceramic base bears unique glazing patterns that filter light into subtle variations. No two creating exactly the same quality of luminescence. Weavers begin their evening rituals, preparing natural dyes in clay vessels heated by charcoal that glows like scattered rubies in the gathering dusk. The dyeing process releases vapors tinged with indigo and turmeric, creating atmospheric layers that shift from blue to golden yellow as evening breezes stir the aromatic compounds. These ancient color-making techniques produce hues that seem to contain inner light, pigments that will transform plain cotton into textiles resembling captured sunset fragments. Children's laughter echoes from hidden playgrounds where swings hang from massive banyan trees, their aerial roots creating natural jungle gyms that sway gently with each small adventurer's movement. The sound carries pure joy across darkening landscapes, innocent voices blending into harmonies that speak of carefree moments before sleep claims young minds. Their games follow traditional patterns passed through generations, activities that strengthen both bodies and cultural connections to ancestral wisdom. Elderly storytellers gather beneath pavilions, where carved wooden panels depict mythical creatures frozen mid-flight, their voices preparing to weave tales that have entertained island communities for centuries. The speakers' weathered hands gesture expressively, creating shadow puppet theaters against torchlit walls, while their words paint pictures more vivid than any visual medium could achieve. These oral traditions carry historical truths wrapped in metaphorical beauty that reaches listeners on multiple levels simultaneously. Artisan workshops transition into evening production schedules, their craftspeople working by lamplight that reveals details invisible during harsh daylight hours. Silversmiths hammer precious metals into intricate jewelry patterns, each strike producing crystalline notes that ring across cobblestone streets like tiny bells, celebrating creative accomplishment. The metal responds differently to temperature variations that occur after sunset, becoming more malleable and accepting decorative techniques impossible during day's heat. Herb gardens release evening fragrances as cooling temperatures allow volatile oils to concentrate near ground level, creating natural aromatherapy zones that shift with every footstep through carefully tended beds. Lemongrass releases citrus notes sharp enough to clear mental fog, while simultaneously calming nervous energy, its blade-like leaves producing whispered music when brushed against silk clothing. These botanical pharmacies operate according to circadian rhythms that maximize therapeutic compound production during twilight hours. Traditional musical instruments emerge from storage places where they rest between performances, their wooden bodies expanding slightly in humid evening air until reaching perfect resonance for night concerts. Gamelan orchestras begin tuning bronze keys that will soon create sonic landscapes capable of transporting listeners into trance states where time becomes fluid and boundaries between self and environment dissolve. The metal surfaces bear patinas developed through decades of skilled hands, their oxidation patterns affecting tonal qualities in ways that make each instrument irreplaceably unique. Coastal paths wind between tide pools, where nocturnal marine life begins activities invisible during daylight. Bioluminescent organisms preparing for displays that will transform dark waters into living starfields. The rocky surfaces feel different underfoot now that evening temperatures have cooled them from day's blazing heat, no longer burning against bare soles, but retaining just enough warmth to feel welcoming rather than challenging. Seaweed varieties that remained hidden during bright hours now extend feeding appendages that create underwater gardens visible only to patient observers. Temple courtyards fill with devotees carrying offerings arranged on banana leaves that serve as biodegradable plates. Their surfaces naturally waxy enough to protect delicate flower arrangements, while allowing eventual decomposition that feeds soil organisms. The leaves themselves contribute subtle vegetal fragrances that complement floral offerings, creating olfactory compositions as carefully balanced as visual arrangements. Candlelight transforms these simple presentations into artistic masterpieces that honor spiritual principles through ephemeral beauty. Ancient stone channels direct spring water through monastery grounds, where monks cultivate vegetables using techniques that maximize nutrition while minimizing environmental impact. Their gardens producing food so flavorful that simple preparation methods suffice to create satisfying meals. The water's mineral content varies according to seasonal rainfall patterns that affect underground flow paths, creating taste variations that experienced gardeners recognize and accommodate in their planting decisions. Handmade paper workshops begin evening production runs, their craftspeople working with pulp created from recycled materials mixed with flower petals that will become decorative elements in finished sheets. The paper-making process requires precise timing that depends on humidity levels that fluctuate throughout daily cycles, creating natural scheduling systems that connect human activity with environmental rhythms. Steam rising from pulp vats carries cellulose particles that create atmospheric effects resembling incense smoke. Night-flying fruit bats emerge from daytime roosting sites, hidden in cave systems where guano deposits have accumulated into nutrient-rich fertilizer that will eventually enrich agricultural soils throughout the island. Their wing membranes create subtle air pressure changes detectable as gentle touches against exposed skin. Invisible caresses that announce their presence to those sensitive enough to notice such delicate sensations. The bats navigate using echolocation calls, pitched too high for human hearing. Yet their presence registers as indefinable awareness of movement in darkness. Traditional coffee roasting begins in courtyards where beans are heated in large woks, stirred constantly with wooden paddles that have absorbed decades of aromatic oils. Their surfaces seasoned like fine cookware through repetitive use. The roasting process releases compounds that will determine final flavor characteristics. Chemical transformations visible as color changes that experienced roasters read like written instructions. Smoke from these operations carries caffeine molecules in concentrations sufficient to provide mild stimulation simply through inhalation. Terraced mountainsides reveal hidden meditation retreats where individual huts provide solitary contemplation spaces designed according to principles that maximize natural ventilation while creating acoustic isolation from external distractions. The structures utilize bamboo engineering that flexes with seismic activity without compromising structural integrity. Their organic architecture blending seamlessly with forest environments. Inside these sanctuaries, woven mats provide seating surfaces that conform to body contours while maintaining proper spinal alignment during extended sitting periods. Village boundaries blur into agricultural zones where different crops create distinct microclimates that support specialized wildlife communities. Their interactions creating ecosystem webs so complex that removing any single element would disrupt entire biological networks. Farmers have learned to work within these natural systems rather than against them, their methods producing sustainable abundance that continues regenerating year after year without external inputs beyond sun, rain, and careful observation. As consciousness drifts deeper into Bali's nocturnal embrace, these countless details weave together into seamless tapestries of experience, where every sensation contributes to overall harmony, creating perfect conditions for peaceful surrender to sleep's healing restoration. Shadow puppet masters begin their preparations in dimly lit chambers where leather figures await transformation into living legends. Their translucent forms carved so intricately that candlelight reveals internal patterns invisible until illuminated from behind. The puppeteer's fingers move with practiced fluidity, each gesture requiring years to perfect as they manipulate multiple characters simultaneously while narrating epic tales in voices that shift between heroic and mystical. Oil flames flicker through the delicate leather, creating moving frescoes on cotton screens that blur the boundaries between dreams and ancient wisdom. Cinnamon bark peels from trees in perfect spirals, its harvest releasing essence so potent that nearby flowers seem to intensify their own fragrances in response, creating aromatic competitions that benefit anyone fortunate enough to wander through these natural spice laboratories. The bark itself curls as moisture evaporates, producing tiny crackling sounds like distant fireworks, celebrating each tree's generous offering. Workers collecting these precious scrolls move with reverent care, understanding that hasty handling diminishes the essential oils that make their harvest valuable. Underwater coral gardens visible through crystal clear lagoons pulse with colors that shift according to lunar phases. Their living architecture providing shelter for fish species that exist nowhere else in oceanic realms. The coral polyps respond to water temperature fluctuations by by adjusting their pigmentation, creating daily light shows for observers patient enough to notice such gradual transformations. Snorkeling through these submerged cities reveals acoustic environments where clicking, chirping, and whistling communications create symphonies as complex as any terrestrial forest. Carpenter ants construct bridges across stream gaps using their own linked bodies, engineering marvels that demonstrate collective intelligence, operating without centralized planning or communication systems humans can decode. These living structures pulse with unified movement as thousands of individuals coordinate their positions to maintain structural integrity, while allowing passage for colony members carrying food supplies. The bridges sway rhythmically, creating hypnotic visual patterns that seem choreographed by invisible conductors. Volcanic glass formations scatter throughout mountain regions where ancient eruptions left behind natural sculptures, whose edges remain sharp enough to serve practical purposes despite centuries of weathering. Local artisans collect these obsidian treasures for incorporation into ceremonial tools, whose cutting abilities surpass modern manufactured blades, while maintaining spiritual significance that connects users to elemental fire forces. The glass surfaces feel impossibly smooth, yet somehow grip-enhancing. Textures that seem to violate physical laws through mysterious mineral properties. Underground mushroom farms cultivate varieties that thrive in darkness, so complete that human eyes require extended adjustment periods before distinguishing individual specimens. These fungal gardens produce protein sources while filtering air through natural processes that create underground atmospheres fresher than surface environments. Their biological activities generating subtle warmth that maintains comfortable temperatures throughout seasonal variations. Harvesting requires touch-based identification techniques that experienced gatherers perform with fingertip sensitivity rivaling professional musicians. Bamboo telephone systems connect remote mountain villages through networks of hollow tubes that carry voice communications across distances that would otherwise require strenuous hiking to traverse. The acoustic engineering utilizes natural resonance properties to amplify whispers into clearly audible messages, while filtering out environmental noise that might interfere with transmission clarity. Children learn to operate these organic communication devices before mastering conventional speech patterns. Their young voices perfectly suited to frequencies that travel most efficiently through vegetative conduits. Beehives constructed inside hollow coconut shells produce honey varieties whose flavors reflect specific flowering seasons. Their sweetness carrying botanical signatures that change according to rainfall patterns, affecting nectar production across diverse plant communities. The bees themselves seem calmer when housed in these natural containers, their buzzing acquiring musical qualities that some listeners claim promote deeper meditation states. Harvesting honey from coconut hives requires timing based on bee behavior cycles that vary according to moon phases and barometric pressure changes. Sunrise ceremonies begin before dawn breaks, participants gathering in stone circles where ancient alignments focus solar energy into concentrated beams that warm specific spots with mathematical precision. The ritual movements follow choreographed patterns that synchronize human biorhythms with planetary rotations, creating collective breathing that seems to influence weather patterns in subtle ways atmospheric scientists cannot fully explain. Participants report sensations of weightlessness during peak moments when individual consciousness merges temporarily with group awareness. Driftwood libraries preserve manuscripts written on palm leaves, whose surfaces accept ink made from squid secretions mixed with vegetable dyes, creating documents that withstand tropical humidity while remaining flexible enough for repeated handling. The writing implements themselves are carved from bird bones hollow enough to serve as natural fountain pens when filled with these organic inks. Scholars who study these texts claim the reading experience differs qualitatively from modern books, their eyes adapting to script forms that seem to pulse with living energy. Tidal calendars carved into coastal cliff faces track lunar cycles with accuracy that rivals contemporary astronomical calculations. Their creators, having observed celestial mechanics for generations before developing mathematical systems that encode complex data into symbolic representations. The carvings themselves, whether differently depending on wind exposure and salt spray concentration, creating temporal records that reveal historical climate variations to those trained in interpreting stone erosion patterns. Touching these ancient instruments produces tactile sensations that some describe as electrical, though no modern equipment detects measurable energy fields. Hot springs emerge at seemingly random locations throughout jungle regions, their mineral compositions varying according to underground flow paths that change following seismic activity too subtle for conventional detection methods. Bathing in these natural spas produces skin conditions that local healers claim indicate internal health states. The mineral absorption, creating temporary color changes that fade over several days. The springs themselves maintain temperatures that fluctuate according to tidal cycles, suggesting connections to oceanic systems operating through mysterious underground channels. Night-blooming vines release pollen clouds, visible as shimmering dust particles that drift through moonbeam columns like fairy godmother magic made manifest in botanical form. These reproductive displays occur according to schedules coordinated across entire forest regions, creating synchronized events that transform landscapes into living celebrations of fertility and renewal. The pollen itself carries genetic information between plant communities separated by geographical barriers. Its microscopic particles serving as natural communication networks that maintain species diversity across evolutionary timescales. Traditional fishing nets incorporate patterns that create underwater light effects when deployed during specific tidal conditions. Their geometric designs functioning as both practical tools and artistic expressions that honor marine environments they depend upon for survival. The net materials themselves are treated with plant extracts that render them nearly invisible to fish, while maintaining sufficient strength to contain substantial catches without causing harm to creatures that escape through properly sized mesh openings. As night's deepest hours approach and Bali's nocturnal symphony reaches its most profound movements, consciousness dissolves gradually into peaceful surrender, where island rhythms merge seamlessly with heartbeat and breath, carrying awareness into sleep's restorative depths, where dreams continue the journey through landscapes more beautiful than waking minds can fully comprehend. Wind-carved hollows in ancient cliffs shelter clusters of prayer stones worn smooth by countless pilgrims' touches, their surfaces retaining tactile memories that seem to pulse against questioning palms with accumulated blessings from generations of reverent contact. These natural alcoves collect dewfall that transforms into sacred droplets, each one carrying dissolved minerals that create tiny prisms when early starlight passes through their crystalline structures. The stone chambers themselves breathe with temperature changes, expanding and contracting in rhythm with the island's geological heartbeat. Terraced lotus gardens descend toward valleys where underground springs feed ceremonial pools designed for purification rituals practiced since time immemorial. Their stepped architecture creating waterfalls that sing in pentatonic scales as liquid cascades from level to level. The lotus stems themselves serve as natural straws, drawing nutrients through hollow cores, while their broad leaves create living umbrellas that shelter smaller aquatic plants growing in their protective shadows. Night herons wade through these sacred waters with movements so deliberate they seem choreographed, their reflections creating double images that blur distinctions between reality and mirror worlds. Phosphorescent algae begins gathering in tidal shallows where warm currents meet cooler deep water, preparing for bioluminescent displays that will transform breaking waves into liquid lightning throughout the remaining darkness. These microscopic organisms respond to mechanical disturbance by releasing stored energy in blue-white flashes, turning every footstep in shallow water into a trigger for magical illumination that fades as quickly as it appears. Sacred groves where meditation cushions rest beneath trees whose bark contains natural sedative compounds slowly release these calming chemicals into night air through transpiration processes that peak during sleeping hours. The ancient trees themselves seem to drowse, their massive forms settling deeper into earth as darkness progresses, roots extending ever further into soil rich with volcanic nutrients that feed dreams as much as growth. Consciousness drifts naturally toward these peaceful depths, carried by island breezes that whisper lullabies in languages older than memory, where rest arrives as gently as morning mist embracing sleeping mountainsides, and awareness dissolves into Bali's eternal embrace of perfect, restorative slumber.